and all of those wonderful things. So it's good to see all of your faces. I feel like most of you have been on calls before. We may be able to forego some of the nicety intros and get to business. Is that good for everybody? Okay, and you'll get to know. See, look, Eric's eating. Michael, you can eat too. Okay, so thanks again, everyone, for joining us. We're trying to get to some of this talk around the ESHIP goal project. So as just a very, very brief background. So as we recognize the 7 ESHIP goals as the kind of the pillars or the framework in which we move, propel, and accelerate the emerging field of ecosystem building, there were suggestions on how we can go about doing this. Those suggestions, projects, were proposed. There were about 130 of them initially that were proposed. And looking at the list of things that could be done nationally and wider across the field as opposed to local, because some of the 130 initiatives were very locally focused. There were about 30 of them that were recognized by the community, by ESHIP champions, by people at the foundation as here's a good place to start. Out of those 30 initiatives, which are all listed on various websites and such, there has been some momentum around some. So at the 2019 ESHIP Summit, there were project canvases, so just a templated canvas that was created and shared with the community in one of the breakout sessions that we had, and 30 canvases or so were kind of placed out there, and groups formed around the 30 and started ideating and iterating. There is a link to those 30 canvases that happened at the ESHIP Summit. It was just kind of this is, getting a pulse check from the community of how a project like this would go forward. On the dashboard, and I'll put the link in here while we're talking, they were shared out with everybody. When we got back to goal calls after that, we talked about how some of these could emerge, and new canvases or updated canvases were created. That was the list that we had sent out prior to this call. So you have received the ability to update and share some of the things that have been going on by some of you. So I know for some of us on some of the ESHIP goal calls, we did a project canvas as part of the call, right? Eric and Pava, you've been part of that to talk about, so that we got people familiar with the process. The challenge of mass collaboration is just the lots of challenges of mass collaboration. How do you propel projects forward with people in an organization? If you're part of an organization, it's probably a little bit easier to define. This is something that we do as part of our mission. EcoMaps is an example, right? Oh, I see this need. I'm going to create this thing. Here, let's put some structure around it. And that becomes a project. Your initiative and your goal, your project aligns with the ESHIP goals, right? It helps us with goal 5, metrics and methods. And at the same time, it's also good to get feedback and input and all of that. Brett, I know that Brett and Eric are familiar. Forward Cities has put together a scorecard. And so that's something that would be really great to share with the community, all kinds of things. There are projects that are kind of nascent as ideas that 1 or 2 of us have. And letting more people in. So while the other people are joining us, so the invitation is go forth and create projects. The challenge of go forth and create projects is nobody's leading except all of us, right? So So how do you facilitate, encourage, and support project movement when no one's in charge, but we need support? So one of the conversations as it's come up is that if we had a group of people that got together that were working on goal projects, that that could come together and talk, cross goals, or ideate, or have those conversations, get feedback and input, that would help. So we're beta testing a goal call, a goal project update call. So that's the invitation. So again, I'm going to sit back and help make some notes. And so here is, hold on. All right. So here again is as one more person. Wait, no, more people coming. Bear with me. As more people join the call. All right. So what we have is an agenda document. I would love to hear from all of you who have either submitted projects or have projects to share. Be able to do that so we can capture it on the call. And also, oops, everyone in meeting. And then maybe what we can do is discuss, as the agenda says, some of the highlights and the roadblocks and what you need and what's next for all of you who are interested in doing this work. So, so to that end, there is, and Gina's on here twice, but I know that this other person isn't Gina. Can I rename you? And so that we can identify who you are, or can you rename yourself?
Sure.
Okay. Do you want me to do that? Let me know.
I'll try it.
Okay. All right. Let me know if you have a problem. Otherwise, just type your name in the chat and I'll know to change it. Okay. I'm going to fill out the agenda. And as an example of one of these, what I would like to do is, as we go down the list, Unsung Heroes is kind of up on the top of the list of these goal projects. So Annika, can you give us kind of an update, highlights, roadblocks, and what you need, or if there's anything needed?
Absolutely. So for those of you who don't know, we ran, Jeff Bennett, Jess Edwards, and myself ran a campaign called the Unsung Heroes of Ecosystem Building. It started, we did a lot of background work in January, February. It started on Valentine's Day, February 14, and we are just finishing up now. So 7 months of content, each month around one goal. So we would introduce a goal, and then a number of champions were interviewed that were nominated in their community to be featured in their work. We have published close to 50 pieces now. It's all on ecosystembuilderhub.com. So we're actually wrapping up now. We're in the process of writing up a short impact report, and are hoping to share some of those insights and learnings at the ESHIP Summit. We have decided to pause until the end of the year, and we haven't decided yet if we're going to run a 2.0 because this work has not been funded. And as all of you know, it's really hard to do these sustained efforts if they're not being paid. So we'll see what traction looks like at the ESHIP Summit, and then may or may not run a second round in 2021. So we're using ESHIP sort of as a market test to see if we get interest from funders and partners who want to participate. In terms of roadblocks, Cecilia, do you mean more internally, or what would you like me to touch on in terms of roadblocks?
I think it's helpful. Let's save the roadblocks for specific projects and note them in the document. I know you did a great job of highlighting what the highlights were in the document. If we can keep that as the running document of what's working and what's not working, and the conversation around goal projects overall, roadblocks and highlights, to the agenda document, that would be great, so that we can refer back to the agenda document for ongoing community roadblocks and ongoing community highlights. I know that Unsung Heroes has been a successful campaign. We can put that under highlights, and then the specifics for that particular projects, we put into the spreadsheet. Does that sound clear? Does that help?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Is there, and as we talk about this, what one of the other things that we'd like to touch on is what's missing as a column from the document. One of the things that were pointed out when we first started to create the document was, is this part of the practice of ecosystem building, or does it work towards the profession of ecosystem building? So we created a column. It's a living document. This is for you to help all of you ideate, collaborate better, get more visibility. That's the goal of having this call, is so that we're aligned and supportive and help in the ways that you need assistance. There's and it really is a response maybe more to a lot of the things that we've been hearing. So I'd like to hear about roadblocks, but let's go back to the other. So I don't know that we've got anything on Kaleidospeak. Is
No.
okay. And then EB Hub. So Jeff's not on the call, but we'll fill in, and that project is launched, and Jeff hosts an ecosystem builder hub. It's a repository of ecosystem building stories, and anybody who writes a story focused on ecosystem building can submit to be on EB Hub. It's a great pool of those things. It was an initiative that was discussed and ideated, and initially Jeff, Tyler LeCompte, and Avery Kent were working on that project. And I know Annika's had stories on there. Eric, Tiffany, is there anything else that we want to add about that project?
I don't want to speak on Jeff's behalf, but I think we've had conversations along similar lines of unsung heroes. There was a call at the last, I think throughout the whole summit, is we need this one clearinghouse where we can go to find case studies and reports and articles, and he has different themes. And I think that is working, but again, figuring out the sustainability, and I think this is going to come up for a lot of projects, is how do we drive this forward? So far, it's been a lot of Jeff's work of pulling stories and just putting out whatever he finds, but is there a system where we can generate submissions, where we can make sure we're all staying in the loop? So anyone who has ideas, but I think that was one of the bigger roadblocks.
Great. And then Alistair is not on the call. Does anybody have any input or insights on the project that Alistair had written a canvas on?
Well, it's continuing to evolve past this is North, evolving past what is in the canvas. He is a moving target, and every iteration is brillianter than the last. So anything we can do to encourage him. I think one thing he would like to have is be able to have a conversation with ESHIP Nation. He is seeking input from them. He can reach out to the scholarly side. He can reach out to the public policy side, but and I don't want to speak for the questions he's going to ask, because he can articulate them far better than I can. But I think one thing that would help is and maybe it's a solo webinar with Alistair, and we can, I know that's it's up to us to go do that. So, but I think, and he has enough cachet with the right people that that this is a project that could get funded by someone if once he gets to past the sort of the alpha stage of the questionnaire. And I think his biggest hurdle is we all have to make a living, and he's no different than the rest of us. But I'd say the one thing that we could do for him is give him an audience of ecosystem builders, because he's trying to come from first principles on all this, as befits complex adaptive systems.
Okay.
And the other thing I would do is everybody get a tattoo saying complex adaptive systems. So that would be a good reminder for folks.
Okay. So I'm hearing specific to this project, what's needed first, maybe to reach out and talk to Alistair about hosting. If he's interested in hosting a call and then sharing that information out with the community. Does that sound?
Yeah, I'm happy to reach out, and because I think he's that, you know, it ain't hard to do a Zoom thing. And, you know, as one of my friends says, even his grandmother knows how to do breakout rooms and Teams in Zoom now. So, you know, it's just maybe just time to go do it. And,
Okay.
and you know, mostly because I just love talking to him. I learn, one of those people, you learn something on every call.
All right. I think that sounds great. And if you want to spearhead that, that would be wonderful. We can just have you share that on Slack, I guess would be the best thing. Going into, Norris, you've got a couple of them. Is there, and in the interest of time and offering opportunity to cover as much as we can, do you have some high-level highlights on?
In terms of the highlights, I don't know if Chad or CJ are on this call, but the 5.x project that has, you know, well, the innocent question that actually Enoch Illwell said like a year and a half, 2 years ago, well, what is an entrepreneur? How do, you know, what about the definitions and measures of it? It's not an easy question because, well, you torture doctoral students by saying, well, just make a list of all the definition of entrepreneurs that are out in the literature. And they usually get to 100 before they give up. And that has, it's funny at one level, but it's also, if you're trying to do policy, you're trying to do research, you're trying to help entrepreneurs, that figuring out what the terminology is. So they started, you know, kind of collecting these things and trying to refine them. And you know, I wish CJ was on the call because I'm just totally blown away by the work he's done. There's a wiki with all this information on that should be readily available. CJ would love to have more people with eyeballs to look at it, whether you're a practitioner, whether you're a scholar, whether you're anybody, you know, what makes sense, what doesn't, what new questions are being raised. He's you know, I think he's tired of talking to me and Chad, and Alistair. So that I think I would say put the link out to the wiki again to people who are interested and chime in. I gotta believe, I see Reagan's on the call. I gotta believe he's got some great insights for that. Reagan is now ducking behind his desk, but I think that getting to help that one going forward is to look at that, because that's the thing I love about it is it might have sounded cheeky, you know, this could be cheeky to, you know, serious scholars and to serious policy people, but the reality is it's been resonant with them because, you know, this is something where we can make a material contribution to both science and policy. So that's exciting. So get to the wiki. If you need that link, I can put that in the notes. But I think it's just kind of fun to read through it, even if you're not, you know, not a data nerd.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yep.
I'd say that's both a highlight and I think that there's something going for it. And I would say, if you ever get a chance to say, way to go, attaboy to Chad, CJ, or Alistair, please do so. They have been busting their butts, like, and none of us ever get appreciated as much as we'd like to. And if we can't get paid, you know, an ATA person's not a bad place to start.
Okay. Great. Thanks for the update. We will.
The other, are you talking about, in terms of goal 5, there are, I was under the impression we were supposed to plug in, you know, all the things that had come up in our conversations, that, you know, this ought to be a project. So I had notes on that. So some of those labeled new, if people, on any of those, they're pretty greenfield. If you have any of those remotely appeal to you, just contact me and look at that. The other highlight with practice is this sort of meeting of the minds that, is having at a conference, getting ecosystem scholars, ecosystem champions, practitioners, and policy people all in the same room talking about what are the right research questions, what are the questions we need to answer the field, and that has gone, I think, smashingly well. There are multiple doctoral dissertations that are being significantly influenced by this interaction, that especially among younger scholars and newer and people coming to the entrepreneurship field from the practitioner policy side, really resonate with the bottom up. We talk bottom up, but all the research models are very top down, very institutional. And it is exciting to see the stuff that's popping out of it. There's a young scholar in Glasgow, she's Czech, in Scotland. She is not only doing a brilliant dissertation that is going to address, how do ecosystem governance, how do we work together, very goal 6. She also is a startup. She's also a Startup Week an organizer and started their startup grind chapter there. So we were connecting with some the highlights are we are connecting to the young, best and brightest. We are connecting to the top policy people, and ESHIP has a seat at the table, and we're at least getting credit for some of these matches have been made.
Norris?
Yeah.
Norris. So I'm really it's valuable, and I'm excited about it. I also want to be mindful of other projects on the list.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Anyway, but how you guys can help is when we keep doing these things, just if you're interested, come and join and be part of the fun. It's again, the barrier is somebody which named Norris needs to keep get off his butt and keep going. But Goal 5's got there's just a lot of great discussions about moving forward. So if you're interested, holler. If not, no worries.
Okay, great. I think next Tuesday is a good time for anybody who's interested in the Goal 5 conversation to sign up and be on there. We can put in a link on the follow-up email to this call to let people know how they can do that, and then we'll have that on the Goal 5 channel on Slack. Brett, can you tell us a little bit about the Forward City Scorecard, please?
Yes. So this Forward City Scorecard was set up as a way for us to be able to apply kind of a common practice to each of the cities or communities that we work in. It's really a grouping of the elements that are going to make sure an ecosystem is being developed comprehensively. And so it serves as a bit of a checklist, but also kind of a personal just analysis of where you're at, so that you can find those weak spots in your ecosystem and develop some strategies to improve those. It's split into 4 general categories: people, programs, networks, and narratives. There's focus on the talent pipeline, identifying the champions, looking for pathways for new businesses to be able to tap in, evaluating the metrics of different impact strategies, the storytelling and conversation elements, obviously capital and financing. There's some elements on policy as well. So it's pretty encompassing, and forgive me for not having it up now. I just made that entry into the sheet today, but I'll get that up in there as soon as I have a best. I just have to link it because we don't have it. It's not a public document. But once I get that, I'll load that up. And obviously it's something that we think can be extremely helpful to the national ecosystem.
I'll plug in here too, Brett. Hey, everybody. Hey, Brett.
Hi.
I will jump in there and say this is actually also a free tool that we are making available to any ecosystem builder that wants it. So this is not a for purchase product. This is something that we'll make available free to anyone that wants it. And also our goal is to get it out to as many ecosystem builders as possible so that we can have data on different ecosystem buildings that we can compare across ecosystems around the nation and then be able to share that data back out with folks as well.
Great, thank you. Then I don't see Beth on the call, so so I'm gonna just move quickly because I think one of the things that we want to be able to land is some of the roadblocks and what's next as an important part of getting all of you together to discuss this. So so we'll go to what's next. I know all the other stuff is all centered around goal 5. Is that correct, Norris?
Well, I was trying to figure out how to pull that up myself and failing miserably. Well, a lot of them, they're all kind of overlapping. They're project ideas that have the ones that are listed as new for the most part. One that is moving ahead on the kind of the science, ESHIP's loves doing science fairs, and a little hard to do that this year, but we found out we can steal the software from Joey's AppWorks to do a virtual science fair of all the both practitioner and academic researchers that have interesting stuff to share and see how that plays out. We've actually, it's a pretty global list and pretty broad in that. So just stay tuned on that. We've got commitments from pretty much everyone to at least nominally to participate, subject to not having a conflicting Zoom call. But having this, the showcase. Is Mark Lawrence on this call?
No, not yet. Or yeah.
Part of the AppWorks thing, and he can tell you how cool the software is. So staying tuned on that. That's some of the others, like we want to push more translational research. We've had an inquiry from the academic side about that it would be useful if we took the lead on doing kind of a deep dive literature review of what's out there, because we have better access to practitioner, and so that could be a feather in the cap. And there's no trouble finding, brilliant young people who would love to have their names on something that will be very highly cited and at the same time very well used in policy circles. So yeah, we've started some rocks down the hill, and they're starting to get to be bigger rocks as we're rolling. But if you're interested in getting part of that deep dive, let me know. We focusing attention first on 5.x, but that'll be our next grasping of the nettle.
Okay.
I think so. Those are the ones I would say most that are, but you take a look and see what intrigues you.
Okay, great. Somebody put in I don't know that there's an 8th goal. I feel like education may be part of sustainable work, but did anyone want to talk about that?
Monique had I just because
yes.
I'm going to say Monique
Yeah.
Epps. I don't know if she's on the call.
Yeah, so that's the next one after. There's a suggestion of a goal 8 or 9 for education. So just going through the list. Do we want to talk about the education piece before we move forward?
Well, I'm curious. I'm just really intrigued by what Monique put in. If she's on the call, I'd like to hear more about it.
Okay, so we want Monique. Can you share with us a little bit about the prompt that you have in here for education for African American student support?
Sure. Well, actually, Gina, Kim, and I are working on this together. We are both educators living in Los Angeles, and came together earlier this year to start to really think about the needs of the education system and how we could impact the education system given the unprecedented times that we're in. And we actually started this conversation long before that, but this gift of time that we have kind of helped us to spur that along. And one of the things that we did was actually create a why chart to really understand what's happening in public education, and came down to or drilled down to really say that African American boys are the lowest performing subgroup in public education, and we really need to kind of think through that, like how do we support them? And our theory is that if we support the lowest performing children in the system and create a system that works for them, then we would essentially create a system that works for all kids. And so what we've been doing up to this point is really having conversations with organizations and people across the country who have been really keenly focused in on this work. And what we found is that it's taken us into all sorts of different avenues. It's spawned us in all sorts of different ways. And what we're really trying to figure out is what our work truly is to bring these people together to support what it is that they do. Because what we found is that many of them are working in isolation, doing good work here and there, but they're not talking to each other or across their work. And if it does happen, it's really kind of by chance that they learn about each other's work and start to work together, but there is no deliberate or intentional way that these people or the people doing the work have decided to come together to actually learn from each other and support each other in this work. And so we have said that this is probably the space where we want to work and are trying to figure out what our work looks like, what our ecosystem will consist of, and who it will consist of, and how big is too big, how small is too small. So we're really grappling with a lot of questions as we try to figure this out.
Oh, Cecilia, you're muted.
Sorry, I get to do one of those. I think that's wonderful. Thank you for the update, and if you can kind of keep us informed and what would be helpful and what's needed from the community, or what can be supported, that would be great. I think I like Michael's idea about creating. I don't think we can put together a pre-conference as far as the summit goes, but it's definitely an interesting step on doing some of that. So that's the whole idea of this conversation. Ava.
Yeah.
Oh, no, wait, hang on, wait. Okay. Eric, I'm sorry. Let me go to Regional ESHIP Summit Toolkit, Eric.
Oh, I don't want to.
You don't want to cut Pava off?
So that's, yeah. So just wanted to share. So the Regional ESHIP Summit and sort of related toolkit had a lot of heat at the different ESHIPs and a fair amount of productive conversation. To sum up, there's sort of two paths that seemed most productive. One was sort of an ESHIP in a box, similar to a startup weekend where folks would just pick up a thing and run it in their own community. But one of the big questions was, how do we launch this in an appropriate way and ensure that it's providing a value similar to ESHIP? The, I don't know, stumbling block or the challenge is the ESHIP brand is key to making this work in a lot of ways. So whether this gets adopted or is somehow part of ESHIP, it needs sort of the blessing of the Kauffman Foundation and others to move forward if it's going to happen as an ESHIP kind of item. So that decision point is key, I think, to any progress. But there were a number of different organizations and people, locations that were interested in running a regional ESHIP event. So there's certainly interest. I think there's a fair amount of work that's gone into it, but kind of needs a little nudge to move forward.
Okay, Pava, I'm sorry about that.
No worries at all. Actually, right when Eric started speaking, I was just told that my cat pooped in a plant. So I'm glad that I was not talking when I found out about that. Hey guys, I'm Pava. Great to start the introduction. So our work with EcoMap really focuses on mapping out the resources within innovation communities. Specifically, we look at geographies right now, like cities, states, and we're working on a country as well. And the resources that exist for entrepreneurs within different ecosystems. So funding sources, incubators, mentorship programs, all of that stuff. And so we leverage a variety of AI and machine learning models to help us identify, analyze, and then track those resources over time. For one, to understand the better landscape of what all of the resource, looks like in any given community. But then two, to put them into these platforms so that entrepreneurs can really easily navigate all of those different resources. And so we really focus, kind of academically on how do we define different categories of resources? What are the defining characteristics of those categories? And how do we kind of create a scalable data infrastructure so that we can start really understanding in a quantitative way the different assets that exist within communities. Because I know there's a lot of data about, what startups are existing or like the new rates of business creation. There's not as much quantitative information about how many resources exist, what type of entrepreneurs they serve, what industries they serve, et cetera. And so that is what all of our work focuses on. And so always, happy to collaborate, talk about what we do, be an asset in any way that we can, or talk about, mapping some of y'all's ecosystems if you'd ever be interested. And so I'm an open book for collaboration. And yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. Faye, you had a couple of things that, do you want to give us a brief overview before we dive into highlights and roadblocks?
Yeah, I wrote a lot of words there so people can read them. I'm not gonna take up a lot of people's time, but just three things. We really saw the need to try and pull together this idea of a dairy council kind of for ecosystem building. So promoting ecosystem building to the broader audience, and how are we going to share events across the network? How are we going to move the field forward together outside of the Kauffman Foundation and outside of what the Kauffman Foundation does or doesn't do? And so myself, Cecilia, and Kristen Lutz have been working on this concept. It also has been developing in partnership with the NRP host group, and has been in conversation with in some of the goals calls as well. But the idea is it's an informal network, and anyone that wants to participate can participate, just as long as you want to put in a little time. So but the focus this week, this first focus of the group is to promote all of the many ecosystem building and entrepreneurship events that are happening over the fall, to make everybody aware of those across the network. Second thing is Forward Cities is working on, the Ecosystems Unite is also going to be producing an event on November the 10th, really focused only on COVID-19 and racial equity. So this idea, it's called Race to Recovery. We'd love to get as many people involved as possible. And that a lot of this is because the summit really can't hold a whole lot of heavy, deep conversation about this topic, but it's needed. And it's also can be sensitive. So we want to just make room and space for the field to do that together and to also ideate on solutions forward. And then the last one is related, and that is the Forward Cities Abide framework of access, belonging, inclusion, diversity, and equity. We would love to sort of, for folks to be thinking about this across the field and for it to become a shared lexicon of how we talk about DEI as ecosystem builders. And so that we are thinking about it more holistically, and that we all know what we're talking about when we say these words. Anyway, love support on any and all of these things, and more info to come.
Great, thank you. Katie, you added something as well.
Yeah, I was just thinking as I'm going through this myself, but we we are very, I think we've had this conversation before, we're very loose with our labels. And we're very quick to label projects as ecosystem projects, but we don't really know exactly what that means or to what degree. Like I think in each of the pillars, you've got, you know, you've got a range, and I just would like to see a clearer way for us to label entrepreneurial ecosystem projects, so we really know better, you know, what it is. I think it's the same as true with when we are looking at our unsung heroes. What a yeoman's task that was to get that project going. But it would be great if there was a way that we could really measure or classify those things, so that there's so many cool things happening. They may or may not be they may not be ecosystem heroes, or, you know, if we were to put some classification on them. So I just wanted to see some type of way that we can classify these projects to make sure that they are entrepreneurial ecosystem projects. Does that make sense? Oh, maybe it's just my love of tables, but that's important to work
And
on.
I'd love to see an example of what that table looks like, Katie.
Okay.
And I mean, that's, you know, because I think it's challenging, right? There's all these definitions, and I think that especially around the 5X project and all of those, that we keep coming up on the same things, and a lot of these, a lot of the discussions that we're having now are definitely cross goals, and so so the thing that I'd like to hear from all of you is, and knowing that that spreadsheet is an open document, you're welcome to add, and if we need to add another table and or another column, that would be great. So please add what's missing. I think Unsung Heroes and Ecosystem Builder Hub are great examples of things that have moved forward and have momentum and are kind of propelling along. And I've heard from all of you many times, sustainability and funding is a major issue. So that's needed. And yes, Michael, there's a couple of mapping things. There's a couple of the idea of an Airtable, Pava, as you mentioned. We realize that the challenge is when it's one of those things, somebody has to organize and facilitate it, right? Which is all well and good. And then to be able to hold it up and to point to the thing that Faye and Kristen and I have been talking about, where this Ecosystems Unite has emerged, is that it actually becomes a self-selecting tool where you opt in, fill in information, decide the kind of talks you want to have, the conversations, the goal projects that you want, be able to highlight some of this. And that's, it's a work in progress, and it's not something that I'm working on inside the foundation or working alongside, but it's something that Faye and Kristen and I have seen as a thing that's bubbled up. So we've created a project around it. It's hard, right? Mass collaboration is challenging. Somebody had suggested, one of the ESHIP champions who couldn't be on the call today had suggested that maybe instead of trying to cover, like we tried to do just now, all of these things that all of you are working on in custom and bespoke ways in varying levels of movement, is that maybe as a community, if there was interest in picking one or two projects and all focusing on one or two projects for October and November, because the reality is we've got the summit coming up, there's working on the field stuff, and then we have October and November, and then really everybody checks out by December. But if it's something of value and we can move something forward, that's a suggestion by Mark Lawrence, not by me. But he thought that might be a very impactful way to at least move forward on a couple of things as a group. I know some of you have been on the shared vision call where we talk about coming up with a mission and a vision. It's taken more than a dozen people a couple of months to work on this. It takes time, unfortunately. And I can't promise that there will be support for this, but we can make a case for it. So that's just a suggestion. So now I want to open it up to all of you in the time that we have remaining. I want to be mindful of time. And I'll share the document. So basically, let's focus on roadblocks and what's needed and what's next. Because if we don't land that together, then we're going to continue to have these conversations in a circular way. Does that make sense? So the floor is open. What are the biggest roadblocks?
Well, I think a lot of people are mentioned, and Norris pointed out in the Slack that a lack of funding. Oh, I mean, it's already on there. There's a lack of funding specific for ecosystem building. And I also think, at least from my perspective, I don't really know what the landscape is for like what funding sources would even be approached to support ecosystem building like on a net. So maybe like in addition to lack of funding, lack of awareness around how there is sustainable funding streams for these things in different cities, states, et cetera.
Yeah, is it one of the things is figuring out, you know, I think Christine is at the point where she's getting figured out what, you know, who is doing what, and even getting them to play better together. It's figuring out what is it that, that I think we spend a lot of time thinking about, well, what could the NR maybe do for us? And when we really should be thinking about what could we be doing for them, and then maybe that's a better way to engage us. But it is hard because different entities use different terminology to indicate what they're, what do we fund, and that may be clear as mud. So I think there's, a process of kind of matchmaking, and I had a conversation recently with Mr. Stoll, and he said that they are actually. Is exactly one of the things they're working on. So maybe we can figure out ways to help them. But it's also, my experience of talking to some of these folks, knowing, even just who do they like, who do they fund, who do they think are bozos, and sort of trying to be more like the former and not like the latter is interesting, because I had been having conversations with congressional staffers where we have the faint hope that we might be able to get money for ecosystem builders in the next stimulus bill. And the main thing is the SVCs and the chambers and all that, they convinced Congress they are the ecosystem builders, which is a sort of a deeper problem. But the more we can do our homework on, on selling the value of what we're doing, we're still not making progress in like, why are small businesses valuable? Why are new businesses valuable? It really hasn't got as much traction as, as maybe we realize, and certainly not as much as we hope. And so there are some things that we can do, but figuring out what is it that we're going to fund. I think if we can, Katie reminded this, right, us of this earlier, is that in an earlier call that, we need, if we have a little bit more like real projects, so we can say, here's, something beyond the canvas that is something we could actually pitch to someone, add that to figuring out who the right audience to pitch that to, I think will really help. So, but I think that's, that's going to be a tough process. And some of the stuff we're doing is wonderful, but nobody's going to ever want to give us money.
Okay.
Some of the stuff anyway, I'm talking too much. Sorry, too much coffee.
And feel free to add more information to the documents, Nora's, so that we can actually capture that. Somebody else who I know, Michael, I know you've got a lot to say.
Sorry, to the agenda, or
you can add it to, so keeping in mind the document, the spreadsheet is more project specific, right? What do you need? Tell us about the project, that kind of stuff. This is, let's say if this document is something where we can share out to, if I was going to put together a report on what is it that the community needs to move goal projects forward, right? And I was to present this to the foundation, a bunch of NRPs or whatever, what is it that you want to say? What is it that we keep having these side conversations or conversations together, but we haven't really come up with what we need, right? So what are the challenges? And so, Michael, do you have something? And thank you, Annika, for adding to the document.
Yeah, I'm concerned about something we hate so much, and that's silos. And it feels like we're building our own silos. And what I mean by that is that so many of us are out there doing things and reinventing the wheel, unaware that someone else is doing it. So I'm involved in 6 or 8 different groups now. And what I find all the time is people just didn't know that they had already done it. So when I teach entrepreneurship, as all of us know, during the pitch, they come up with this great idea that's never been done before. And while they're pitching, I Google it and show them that, you know, it's all over the web. We're doing the same thing. So unless we can build a structure to prevent that, we're going to waste a lot of our resources and bandwidth.
I hear you. I wholeheartedly agree. Does anybody else have anything to add?
I think just throwing in sort of, if this is something that goes to the foundation or even any sort of level of leadership, is what do the next few years look like? We're well aware of the 3-stage process of discovery,
design, deliver.
Design, deliver. We're at the end of, I mean, I don't even know that we're at the end of deliver, but we're certainly in the 3rd stage. So what's next? Where are we headed? What does, I think it comes back in part to the support and sustainability, but even as far as the vision goes, what is that leadership going to look like? What type of leadership do we need? So I find myself thinking a lot about what is the next step, because I'm missing that next milestone that we're trying to hit.
Mm-hmm. I completely hear you on that. So in the remaining time, what's needed? What do we need to move forward? What can we do in the next? Let's just think about the end of 2020, right? What can we do from now until the end of 2020 that can help support and move this forward? And maybe part of that, and Eric has proposed this before, maybe part of that is coming up with a strategic plan from the community in this is what the community needs, right? And then trying to figure out how to source it. We put our entrepreneur hat on and say, well, we obviously have a problem, right? And we're really good at thinking about solutions. Now, what is the unique value proposition? That's what we've been working on. What is the unique value proposition that ecosystem builders present? And what do we need to get there? And what is a milestone for us? So one of the, here, I'll stop sharing screen.
Cecilia, how soon will you have the mission vision? Because if we don't know where we're going, it's difficult. So how soon will that be finished? And could we set that? Can we throw everything at that and just finish it?
So the idea is, and Brett, please help me because you've been on those calls. So the goal 3 project call, the goal 3 calls for the past couple of months have been working on clarifying and defining, putting a stake in the ground, a mission and vision for the field of ecosystem building. The goal is to share that at the ESHIP Summit, probably more so on field day, right? So we have the moment, the movement, and the field. So those are the 3 days of the ESHIP Summit. The moment is Ecosystem Building 101. Here's an introduction. What the heck is ecosystem building? Why does it matter? Why now? The second day is an opportunity to share tools, and here are some things that are working. Here are some projects. Here's communities that are working, and so kind of highlighting and demonstrating. Those are small groups that you'll be breaking off into. If you have not registered for the ESHIP Summit, please do so. There are scholarships and group discounts available. So it would be great. Thank you, Tiffany. Then the field day, the 29th, is actually more about building the field of ecosystem building by Annika. Thank you for adding to the list. So in the discussion with all of you over the past series of months of calls and with the ESHIP champions, what has evolved is this conversation. You know, we're creating silos amongst the ESHIP goals. We need to talk to each other. Goal 2 needs to talk to goal 4. Goal 6 needs to talk to goal 3, whatever that is, right? So with the
Cecilia, let me just interject here. So for goal 5, we want to come up with some measurements, but
okay.
if we don't know where we're going, we don't know how to measure it. So we're spinning our wheels in a big way. So back to the strategic plan. If we could sequentially go through something, that would help a lot.
Okay. So let me share where we're sort of at, and then the big question of what's next. So from the ESHIP champions input and feedback, and all of you who have been on the calls that have shared, we need to introduce people. I know not everybody feels like we need to introduce people to the community, but a group of people felt that that would be helpful because we keep ending up with people on calls who have never been on a call before, right? So how do you get those people level set, and while not taking up time introducing all of these to the other calls? The second thing that we needed was a goal project focused call. People that are working on projects, getting input, ideating, collaborating, wanting to learn from each other. There is a group of people who want to do a deep dive learning conversations, the speakers that are invited to know what's going on. That seems to have emerged. And then there's a bunch of people who just want to hang out with a bunch of people like them. So those were 4 suggested streams of calls. Thanks, Katie. And please, and so we have a couple of months, right, where we can help and facilitate. The question goes back to you all. What is it you need as a community? What would move the thing that you want to propel forward, right? We've done a lot of scaffold holding, knowing that the scaffolding comes off in bits and pieces, right? What is important? So what is it that we can help facilitate? Grace, I'm really curious.
Yeah, I think that what Michael's saying is that what's needed in order to do anything else is that we have to lock that down. We have to say, yeah, this is it. This and so I guess the question is, when can we do that so that we can move forward to the next step? Because trying to get funding, trying to get anyone else to support this work is not going to happen until that is done.
I hear you, and I agree. Okay, so is it, and this is by vote with your feet, right? You showed up on this call because this thing matters to you. Then if this is what we need and identified as what we need, I'm very happy to host a call. I can put together a doodle. We can pick a time because after the summit, there won't be other calls, right? Let's say in the beginning of October, first or second week, that we think about what happens. If you'd like to have that conversation before that, then we can host it the week between the 16th and the 29th, if that makes sense. Do you have the bandwidth and the energy? Because putting together a call and letting people in the community know about that, I can absolutely do. That's what I'm here to support, is helping you put together the infrastructure for the thing that you need.
Is there any reason why we can't do that on the 29th? And just walk out of there with something done and agreed upon by everybody?
Is that something that you would like to see? There is some agenda of the 29th, but there is definitely room for an agenda of that, if that's a proposed topic and subject that really needs, and what I'm sensing is that that's what you agree on.
I will advocate for that in the design session.
And,
Okay.
and I would like to add that this may be a 26-mile race, but we need to know where the starting line is. And so we could have a meeting just to put the starting line together, because there's so much disparate information out there. I have no idea where we're at right now. It's all over the place. So we don't need to solve it. We don't need to come together and solve everything, but at least come together and put together an initial map to get us thinking about it.
I have an idea for one thing that can be done between now and then is to provide a timeline, to provide context. So kind of like an onboarding thing for anybody who has not been able to participate in all of the calls, so they understand where did all of these projects come from, what has been done so far up to this point, and then what are some of the big questions right now, like, you know, what are we working towards, so that there's a framework for discussion, and then everybody is at least somewhat on the same page once we enter that discussion.
Yeah,
Like that
yeah, and maybe that's a running document so that whenever there is progress on a goal or something major comes, it's in that one document that says, hey, you know what? You know, this came out of this call and this is the next step for this. And so whenever new people come or old people, they can go back and read where everything stands.
I think that's a challenge with Slack because you can't go back. I mean, it's much harder. I think a different source, and having a Google document out there is only that good, right? So it really needs to live somewhere, but that seems very useful. Gina, Monique, thoughts?
Sorry, there's another call happening, so I muted myself. This call was actually very helpful to hear everybody speak. I think I'll have more thoughts once we launch into the summit to see actually what's happening and what information is shared. But I can see that as one of the new launchers or new creators or whatever we are, what we need is, I can see that right now what we need is information and feedback on what exists out there, as well as how we might take ours to the next level in development, and then also knowing what kind of tools everybody is using for the various goals. So I think we'll just go with the flow and see what unfolds.
Okay.
And then communicate as we need with you to see what we can get.
That sounds good. Monique, anything to add?
I echo.
Grace. Sorry. Grace, can you add? I'll note. Go ahead.
Yeah, I echo Gina's sentiments, and I would just say one thing for me, as like Gina and I have been doing this work, we often have conversations among ourselves about whether or not we're doing the right thing. Like, are we on the right track?
Mm.
And I think it would be helpful to be able to have a place where we can go, or a person to whom we can speak to just say, hey, here's kind of where we are. Like, we're just
a feedback loop, right?
I think it's even more than a feedback.
Ecosystem builder mentors.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's what we're looking for, because we are new to this work, like brand new, and trying to figure it out. And yeah.
I think you're off to a wonderful start.
Give me a call, Monique.
Oh, because Faye, you don't have enough to do. But no, I think that, I know.
I'm just saying. But
I
like,
think
that's a need.
It is. It's an absolute need. It's an absolute need. Michael, something to add while you're eating your lunch?
No, notice I will only say that when there's only 4 other people on the.
That's good. Okay, so what I'm hearing from you is maybe that's what we need is a starting line, to kind of come up with what the problems are and the solutions. Well, the ideas of the solutions, but we need to start somewhere. So so I know Faye and I will be on a design call for the summit stuff. I think that the conversation could take place with this group or parts of this group to maybe put a little framework around it for the day of the 29th. That might be useful. In that case, I will email everybody and get at least input and support if that makes sense. Michael, do you have something that you want to add while you're talking about this?
No, I would say to Gina and Monique to make sure you check out the nifty website. I can't wait to talk to you guys. But one of the problems is in education, we try to pull together cognitive frameworks, schemas, and basically it's just building a framework in our brains so that when new information comes in, there's a hook upon which to place it. So that's why when you look at all these projects, if we just heard a little bit from every project and they each took 10 minutes, that might be 80 hours of time I don't have. So we need to like put stuff off. That's in another zone. That's why business schools are so siloed. The accounting people stay in their little, realm and do everything accounting. And yet we ask entrepreneurs to be sort of the handy persons that know a little bit about everything. And that's sort of where we're at with ecosystem builders. And when I look at the projects, they're so specific and people are so into them, it's just overwhelming information. And that's why if we could just sort of place them on a branch and say, okay, that's part of that. But right now, it's difficult because Kaufman's done such a great job in everything you've done, Cecilia, to put together this playbook, which is gorgeous, but the goals seem to mesh together and we lack that higher level view of what is it we're doing, and then there's some confusion. So anything we can do to help eliminate the confusion, make it simple, simpler, because then when someone new comes in, they say, oh, I'm going to go to room 7 because that's sort of my thing, right? I don't need to go to the other rooms. I'll leave them alone.
Right. And I think that was the hope with ESHIP goal calls, is follow your energy and get on the calls that you want. I think that there's emerging some of these conversations about how we want to talk about that next, right? I want to talk to you about projects. Great. I want to talk to you about how I can connect with the community. Great. I want to talk to you about ecosystem building. I just want to geek out with somebody else who gets it, right? Or something like that. So there's different ways that people can come to community, and we're seeing focus streams starting to emerge. And so yes, so my next steps will be that I will follow up with everybody with an email. The suggestion is to have a conversation on how we can put together a thing. If we can land on how we want to discuss this on the 29th, we may be able to propose it as a topic of discussion for the 29th. Does it need to be, is it something where people self-select to go in there? And what does that look like? But it would be great if it was facilitated by someone, not me, right? Not because I wouldn't do it, but because it should come from other voices in the community.
You know, Cecilia, one of the challenges is that I don't know anyone other than you who's familiar with all the projects. And take someone like Norris, who seems to have his foot in a lot of different arenas. He knows so many different people. I don't know who else could facilitate that. That's my challenge.
Okay. Well,
unless Eric knows, or
Eric is pretty good about it, but Eric also has, great. Yeah, I mean, well, let me discuss that with Andy and the team, and let's see what we can come up with. In the meantime, I will definitely follow up, and if there is a want and desire for a call to discuss this amongst the community for the community, something that takes place between the 2 summit dates, then I guess the best thing to do is to ask all of you, do you want to come back and continue this conversation, right? And where do you want the conversation to go? Is that fair?
That's fair. I just want to add one more thing. Let's say that one of the benefits here is that, let's say Monique or somebody like Monique has an idea and actually gets an appointment with an influencer. And in their opening conversation, that person says, well, have you talked to XYZ? And they don't know XYZ exists. Their chances of moving forward are 0.
Mm-hmm.
So all those XYZ people are in room 7. So if we could just open up room 7 for them, they would know everybody.
Yeah.
You know, but there's so much noise right now in the ecosystem area. We need to help sort it out especially for the new people.
Yeah, I think, so we've heard you. I mean, that's the conversation that Faye and Kristen and I have been having. So, so hopefully we'll figure that out, but we're all figuring it out together. So thank you.
I have 2 more quick points. Just
Okay.
Cecilia, I'd be cognizant if let's be sensitive about people that are going to vote with their feet, because they're starting to vote with their mouths already. They're tired of lots of meetings and not moving forward. So we're going to start to lose people.
Yes.
So I don't know how to shake it so that we don't lose, because these people are terrific.
Mhm.
It's a great community. And the last question is, people are really confused about Kaufman's mission and interest in all this. So if we could clarify that, that would help a lot too.
I will pass that on and definitely, and I really truly appreciate you sharing that. So I will look forward to seeing you all at the summit. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Thank you. And Faye, I will talk to you in a minute.
Okay.
All right.
Bye.